First, Second Kings. I finished up First Kings. As I was reading through there, I was running across different mothers, you know, and I thought, well, that could be a Mother Today sermon.
Amen.
One I hit on was that widow of Zarephath. That one always bothered me. I think I mentioned that on Wednesday, where the brook was drying up, the ravens were quitting, not bringing him food, you know, and so he had to move, and hadn't rained in 3 years, remember? He told Ahab, he said, it's not going to rain for 3 years. And so he goes to this widow, and she's fixing her last meal. Her and her son, she's out getting some sticks, couple sticks together to make a fire, to take the last bit of the meal out of the barrel. And Elijah shows up. Well, he's not at the brook getting fed by this. What Brother Kaplinger said the ravens would come in. He said every day that Elijah would look up and say, "Here come the biscuits," and bring the food in, you know. But that's quit now. So he goes to this widow and he tells her, says, "Well, make me something to eat." And that always bothered me. Here the preacher's wanting her to feed him. She's on her last meal. And she does, though. He said, "Fix me something." But you know, after that, the meal barrel never did run out of food. Think that maybe he should tell us something? God has ways of taking care of us, we don't. But then that widow's son dies, and Elijah brings him back to life, if you read the story there. And then I think of Hannah, how she couldn't have a baby. I think of Jesus hanging on the cross, looking down, seeing his mother Mary there, and telling John to take care of her. And that would be on his deathbed, right? Concerned about his mother. I think by then it's probably Joseph, because you don't hear anything about Joseph very far. A lot of people think he died. So Mary was taken care of. And Jesus did have brothers and sisters. But of course, Mary was virgin born till after Jesus was born. But Manny was reading a verse in Sunday school where they accused Mary of being a bad mother and having sex before she got married.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you read a verse like that?
Born of fornication, John.
Yeah. That's what those Jewish religious leaders were accusing Jesus of. And I think Mary heard that a lot too. But Mary knew in her heart. Remember, Joseph thought about divorcing her, separating from her. But an angel told him not to.
Amen.
Isn't that the way the story went? I'm getting older. My mind's not as good as it used to be, but I think I got that story pretty good. But this morning we're wanting to honor the mothers. We've got several. I didn't count how many. I do think God gave us over 14 this morning, though. I was praying the Lord to have it go up. Don't let it go down.
Amen.
Of course, I'm one going up 20, 30 and fill the place up. Maybe the harder you pray, the more likely that'll happen. But also you got to work with and visit and invite people.
That's right.
Bring people with you. That's how we get most people. Somebody else knows somebody. It's family, friends. But it is Mother's Day. The second Sunday in May is set aside for that. On May the 8th, 1914, United States Congress set the second Sunday in May aside to honor our mothers. So it's been going on a pretty good while. And the poem says, of all the earthly things God gives, there's one above all others. It is the precious, priceless gift of a loving Christian mother. I'm thankful for my mom. She didn't always have it easy. And Carol's mother didn't have it easy. Matter of fact, her dad had a drinking problem, and the mother died when her mother was real young, and they just kind of passed her around to different family members, and a lot of the family members basically said, we don't really want you, but you don't have any place else to go. So that'd be kind of hard on a young kid, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But they broke the ice down in Tennessee to baptize her.
I've heard of that.
And I never did baptize like that. I think it was 40-something I baptized down here, wherever it was. Johnny Johnson come up out of the water going, he had heart trouble. Part of his heart wasn't working. It was, huh? And Andy, he got baptized when it was real cold. Everybody's down there in their coats. Now, at least I didn't have to go all the way under the water. I just in the water up to my waist.
When I was baptized, come up out of the water, it started raining. So they said I got baptized and sprinkled at the same time.
Well, Carol got both.
Did you?
Yeah, she was
That's
sprinkled on the
stories in the
Methodist
film,
church when you were little, and then Baptist because you come across me after a while. You started going to Baptist church.
You know what?
So she's in good shape, Baptist and Methodist. I asked that guy that Manny and I were eating. I don't know, it might have been, were you there when I said that to him about John the Baptist?
Yes. Talking to Zeke. His name is Zeke Turner.
And I said, you know, I said maybe I'm facetious in it, but you know who baptized Jesus, don't you? And he said, yeah, John the Baptist. I said, yeah. Now, I said, if a Baptist baptized you, what would you be?
That's a pretty good question.
He never did tell us what church he went to, but he did know his Bible and he did know the Holy Spirit. He had a good testimony.
Amen.
I believe he's saved and on his way to heaven. He has 9 kids. Now, if he'd start coming,
Yeah, that'll add
that'd bump our attendance up quite a bit, wouldn't it?
My mom raised 14
Yeah.
kids.
I think my grandmother on my mom's family, with 8. She's got one of those rings with
Sets in the
that birthstones for each.
Yeah.
And she had one little boy named Mitchell, and his brain was growing, and back then there wasn't anything they could, but it killed him because his brain. I guess when he was real little, he could talk and read at a real young age, and he died when he was a little baby. But my mom was, I think there was 8 in all together. I'd have to stop and count them all up. One got killed in a car wreck, and the youngest daughter, Aileen, up here around Lebanon. But anyway, the carnation was selected as an emblem. I think Carol bought carnations, didn't you, to pass out this morning? There's different colors, so I guess you can kind of pick colors you want. And I think she said she got about 30, so you probably take 2 or 3. And Patty will probably be here tonight, and a few other people. Nancy, I don't know if she'll make it tonight, but the carnation stands for sweetness, purity, and endurance. Sweetness, purity, and endurance. And these are traits of good mothers, so I think that's why they picked that as a flower. But like I told you, I was thinking about different mothers in the Bible. Anybody know who Jochebed was? Moses' mother. It doesn't say it back in the Old Testament. I think you got to read it. Is it in the New Testament, Manny, where it talks about Jochebed? But remember, she had to hide him out and build that little ark and put him in it, and he floated down the Nile River. And then Pharaoh's wife raised, and he grew up in the palace. But the mother got to nurse him and take care of him. She was kind of like, I guess, the nanny for her own son. But if she hadn't done that, they would have killed him because they were killing all the babies out.
Yeah, it's a movie made on that.
Yeah. Yeah, but you got to be careful. Some of those movies, they don't line up with the Bible. You know, they've shown some of those before, and people start calling Carol and I, was that in the Bible? No, the Bible does. They add in and make it
Well, yeah, it's just like a book.
more exciting, but sometimes they get some of the Bible facts a little off. But
I've seen that. Okay.
but that's the story of Jochebed, and she had a baby named Moses, and they picked him out of the water, and he was raised in the palace. But then when he got of age, he decided to stay with the Jewish people. Then he was on the backside of the desert 40 years. He was 40 years in the palace, 40 years on the backside of the desert, and then he spent 40 years getting the children of Israel out of Egypt and going into the wilderness. So he lived to be 120 and died before his natural, said he could see, and he died prematurely because he went against what God told him to do. That's the story if you read it. So you guys need to check me out. Now, the only way I know for you to check me out is get your Bible and go to reading it. That's how you learn about the Bible, is read it, right?
That's right.
So the preacher will tell me, you ought to check the preacher out. I could be off. I've heard I think I've done it before, calls the wrong character in the Bible the wrong name for a whole sermon. and sometimes, I get no verses out of whack, but I try. I try to. But the mother I wanted to look at, we're going back to Kings, 1 Kings. And Solomon, remember Solomon was Bathsheba and David's son. And somebody said, well, now Bathsheba, she was bad. But we're all sinners. But she ends up in the genealogy for Jesus, doesn't she? And she over there in Matthew in the genealogy? For sure.
Yeah, we read about it.
You guys better check that. Make sure the preacher's telling you right. I'm pretty sure that's the way, I know that's the way it is. But anyway, God told Solomon he could have anything he wanted just in a dream. In 1 Kings chapter 3, he has this dream. And said in verse 3, 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 3. And Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. Now really David fought all the battles, but David couldn't build a temple for God, remember, because he had bloody hands, and Solomon ends up. But David got a lot of the material ready. He fought a lot of the wars, so there was a time of peace so Solomon could do all. Solomon was super rich. He tried everything out, and his conclusion was everything in life was vanity except living for God. That was the answer. And he had the money and could check all that out. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statute of David his father, only to be sacrificed and burnt incense in high places. So he wasn't he did some sinning, didn't he? Of course, where he really got in trouble was with women.
Yeah.
And in the last chapter of Proverbs chapter 31, his mother, Bathsheba, I think, calls him Lemuel. And she says that you got to be careful, strange women. And also she warned him, mother gave him instructions, if you're going to be a leader, you shouldn't be drinking alcohol.
That's right.
Wonder how many of our leaders in Washington drink alcohol.
Oh, yeah, I'm going.
Or maybe here in Indiana.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe in Noblesville, Indiana. About the, like a mayor, city council. Matter of fact, it's gotten me some policemen have been caught drunk driving.
Yeah.
I don't know if a Noblesville
Yeah,
one, but
the lawyer, the judge did.
it's
There's
happened.
lots.
And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place, and 1,000 burnt offerings did Solomon offer upon that altar. And Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, ask what ye shall give thee. What would you say if God asked you what you want? That'd be like winning the lottery, wouldn't it?
Yeah, better.
Probably better.
Uh-huh. What would you ask for? Well, everybody thinks about winning the lottery. The bad thing about the lottery is covetousness. Is that one of the 10 commandments you're not supposed to covet?
Yeah.
Do you think any of us covet? We see somebody else has got something and we want better.
That's humanly.
That's a sin.
Yep.
Huh?
Sinner, man.
Bible talks about we ought to be content with what we have. Matter of fact, everything we have, God gave us.
Yeah.
You say, I worked for it. Well, if God hadn't allowed you to have the health and the ability, you wouldn't work for it. Might not even let you have the job. Some people have trouble getting a job.
Yeah.
Verse 6, and Solomon said, thou hast showed unto thy servant David my father great mercy, according as he walked before thee in truth and in righteousness and in uprightness of heart with thee. And thou hast kept for him this great kindness, that thou hast given him a son so to sit on the throne as it is this day. Now his son that was going to sit on the throne was Solomon. So he had Saul, David, Solomon. Those are the only three kings they had where it was the whole kingdom, all the tribes. Now later on, Jesus is going to be the King of the universe, King of kings, Lord of lords. He's the next one to sit on that throne. And he'll rule everything. But here is David, and then it went to Solomon. Solomon is able to ask God for what he wants. And so let's go on down here a little bit farther. Go down to verse 9. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people. What did he ask for? Help me to be a good king. Help me to, I wished our Republicans and Democrats would pray for that. God, help us to take care of the people instead of ourselves.
Yeah.
And fuss and fight with each other. Isn't that what's going on? They can't get anything done because they're all wanting the power. Republicans want the power, the Democrats want the power, the president wants power. Pride goeth before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Well, why did the devil fall? Pride. What did the devil use on Adam and Eve? Well, if you eat of that fruit, you'll know good and evil. You'll know what God knows. Was he lying to them?
Well, yeah. He's a liar.
They got in trouble by doing covetousness, really. And the devil did too. And if you do that, you will. Yes or no? Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this so great a people? I think our leaders need to be praying.
Amen.
Well, God's gotten pushed out of the picture, hasn't he?
Trump's trying to bring him back.
Verse 10. And a speech pleased the Lord, that Solomon had asked this thing. God said, that's a good thing to ask for. Then look at verse 11. And God said unto him, because thou hast asked this thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life. See, he could have said, well, Lord, let me live. Of course, I don't know anybody that's going to live forever, ever. Of course, God's always existed. Jesus came down here and only lived 33 years and died. But he rose from the dead. And since he was able to do that, that's my hope. I don't think I'm going to get out of this world alive necessarily. But I do believe I'm going to have eternal, everlasting life and go to heaven. But this old body is not going to last but so long. But he could have said, well, Lord, let me live, I don't know, like Methuselah, 969 years. But if I were putting that request in, I'd say I don't want arthritis, and I don't want my joints to hurt, and I don't want my back to hurt, and I don't want my feet to hurt. That's not living very good when you have all that, is it?
No more migraines.
Yeah, or sinus infections. And we could make the list as long as you want to go.
No more asthma.
But he asked to be able to rule his people. And God said that was a good thing in verse 11. And God said unto him, because thou hast not asked a thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life, neither hast asked riches for thyself, nor hast asked the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment. Behold, I have done according to thy words. So he's going to give him wisdom to judge his people. Lo, I have given thee a wise and understanding heart, so that there was none like thee before thee, neither after thee, and shall arise like unto thee. And I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, both riches and honor. So really he got everything, because he asked for the right thing.
Amen.
we got to be careful what we're praying for, what we're asking God for. And he goes on, so that there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee all thy days. And if thou wilt walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my commandments as thy father David did, walk then, I will lengthen thy days. And Solomon awoke. Well, God spoke to him through a dream. Now, I never had God. I have dreams, but I don't know that it's God talking to me. Some of my dreams are, anybody here have weird dreams?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes. I had one, these little bears were chasing me all this way. Little big bear. They were climbing the curtains. That was a long time ago. I haven't had that one recently. Then, okay, now Solomon gets this wisdom. Now we're going to get to the mothers. Verse 16. Then there are two women that were harlots unto the king and stood before him. Well, he's the one that judges the people. And verse 17, and one woman said, O my Lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the third day after that I was delivered, so she has the babies 3 days, that this woman was delivered also. So they both had babies now, about 3 days apart. Is that what you got out of that? And we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. And this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid her. She rolled over on her. So now we're down to two mothers and one baby. Now let's read on. Verse 20. And she rose at midnight and took my son from beside me while thine handmaid slept, and laid her in my bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. So she stole the baby, right?
Yeah.
Well, that stuff's happened in hospitals. They had real wicked stuff. I think they had a woman, they cut babies out of women.
Yeah.
It's been in the news. There's craziness in this world. Wickedness. Verse 21, and when I arose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son which I did bear. And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son. She's lying, isn't she? Well, we know because we read the Bible, but read on. Solomon wouldn't know that. He didn't have this Bible to read like this at that time. And the dead is thy son. And this said not, no, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king. So they're arguing whose baby's the live one and which one's the dead one. They're wanting the king to decide. How would you like to have that decision to make? Verse 23. Then said the king, the one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. So they're arguing back and forth. And verse 24, and the king said, Bring me a sword. Bring me a sword.
That's the son.
And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in two. Cut him in half. Somebody, oh, that's awful. What about all the abortions?
That's right.
They cut them up in little pieces and take them out in pieces. But that's not back in the Old Testament. They put them in Molech and burn them.
Burn 'em.
False god. Yes. Molech, when you read that in the Old Testament, they sacrificed their babies to this false idol god. They would burn them. And the king said, Divide the living child in two and give half to the one and half to the other. That's a predicament, isn't it? Verse 26, Then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. Well, we'd say her heart hurt. Her inner parts.
Body wells, yeah.
And she said, "Oh my Lord, give her the living child and in no wise slay it." Now, do you know who the mother is? The mother was willing to sacrifice and give her child up so it could live. Mothers make sacrifices. Not every mother I know makes sacrifices. My mother went without so I could have better clothes. My mother worked and paid people to take care of me so she could work for about the first 8 years of my life. They didn't have welfare and all the stuff they had back then. Now, if they had, I don't know if my mother would have took it, knowing her. You have a mother like that? She said, "It's my job." I remember Joe's dad sitting in church on a Mother's Day, and we got to talking about, somebody got up and sang the song "Precious Memories," and his dad started crying. He's thinking back to his mother. I think back to my mother. You know, sometimes I wished I'd been a better son. I do. But yet my mom, if she were here, last thing I remember my mom telling me, she says, "Caroline," she said, "I love you." We're leaving out of the hospital down at Castleton. "Oh my Lord, give her the living child and in no wise slay it." But the other said, "Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it." I don't think it's hard to figure out who the real mother is. Maybe God did give Solomon a little wisdom. Huh? How would you have figured it out? I think Solomon, God gave him some wisdom in how to figure it out.
Amen.
And then verse 27, then the king answered and said, give her the living child, and no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. The one that loved the child. Now some mothers maybe don't have the material means to take care of their kids like they would like to, but they give up to take care of them.
Amen.
Now I had a little illustration that I've used in the past. Little Katie was asked a question in fractions in school. And if your mother made a pie, and there were 8 children, your mother and father, how much of the pie would you get? And she said 1/9. And the teacher said, Katie, don't you know your fractions? And she said, yeah, I know my fractions, but you don't know my mother. She'd say she didn't want any.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen most mothers are like that. Most mothers are like that. They'll go without to take care of their children.
Amen.
My mother did. I know she did. And Carol's mother did too, didn't she? And Carol said this morning, she said, I don't really like Mother's Day. Because we miss them. But if you're a Christian, will you see them again? Is that your hope?
Amen.
I'm looking forward to seeing my mother, her mother, my dad. I believe I'll see Grandma Heron. I really do. After all, she got on that nurse about that short dress. But back then they thought that they had more standards than we have.
That's right.
We've gone away from God. And really, churches used to be a whole lot stronger in their doctrine and their beliefs and stuck to the Bible more than they do today. I preached my mother's funeral. I preached Carol's mother's funeral. Preached my grandmother on both grandmothers. But thankfully, I believe they were all saved. That's the hope. I had a story I told about that. Carol's mother at her funeral. This lady would fix, I think it was a ham. And she'd always cut the end of the ham off. And so that when the daughters started cooking hams, they always cut the end of the ham off. After a while, a couple of the sisters got to talking to each other and said, well, why did the mother cut the end of the ham off? And they just carried on in the tradition, right? Well, it's because she didn't have a dish long and big enough to hold it. So there really wasn't, other than she didn't have a dish, so. But did they pick up something from their mother? Did you pick anything up from your mother? Thing with Carol's mother, she wasn't highly educated, but she had good common sense. And she says, just do right. And I'll tell you what, they better do right if she was around. If they had made fun of anybody else, boy, they'd been in trouble.
Yeah.
You don't make fun of other people if they're different. Yet today, we've got in society what's going on. Seems like nobody can get along. Everybody's standing around with a chip on their shoulder saying, knock it off so I can be mad at you. I think we ought to be praying for each other. Instead of talking about each other, we ought to talk about each other to God. You can pray for me all you want. I need a lot of prayer.
Amen, me too.
I really do. D.L. Moody once heard a preacher say, the world has yet to see what God can do with one person completely surrendered to God's will. And he said, in his heart, by God's grace, I'll be that man. I heard one preacher say he thinks he knew the man like that. Knew of a man, Apostle Paul. He'd probably come as close as anybody. But we ought to want to be that way. Shouldn't we want to serve God and live for God? But you know, you take a mother, she risked her life to have a baby. And I believe it's a miracle every time a baby's born.
Amen.
Some mothers have died in childbirth. And it's possible that somebody would die in childbirth. Sometimes the baby dies, and that's a sad thing too, isn't it? But even if that happens, you still have, I believe you'll see your baby. Now, I don't know, and I'm not going to get in a fight over when you get to heaven if there'll be babies there. But if they are, they won't stay babies.
Amen.
I had one guy in the church got in a big argument. He said, we're going to be like Christ. And when Christ died, he was 33. So that proves there's not going to be any babies in heaven. But I don't think you can give me any scripture that proves it one way or the other. I don't. But you know, mothers deserve honor. They risk their life to have children. They make sacrifices for children. Did this lady back here say, don't cut the baby in half? That little girl, she says, well, Mom wouldn't even eat her piece of pie because she wanted everybody else to have a little more. I've seen a lot of mothers like that. Mothers deserve honor. They set an example for us to live by.
Amen.
Don't they? Did your mother set you any examples? G. Campbell Morgan, sometimes called the Prince of Expositors, had 3 brothers, and all of them were preachers. And son Howard was asked one time who was the greatest preacher in the family. Without hesitation, he said, Mother. Now, my wife preaches me all the time. A lot of mothers preach to their kids. You know what the kids say? You don't want me to have any fun.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's why they tell them stuff. I think they tell them because they don't want them to get hurt. They don't want to mess their lives up.
Amen.
Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12 says, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee.
Amen.
How can we honor our mothers? How? Well, if the mother risked her life for you to be born, maybe you ought to get saved.
Amen.
We can honor our mother by doing God's will. I think my mom would want me to do God's will. Now, in fact, I don't think she would. I know she would. And if I didn't, she'd probably be telling me, you need to straighten up. I know one mother, Jerry Fugate, used to tell her son Matt, said, now Matt, you need to get your heart right.
Yeah.
That's the way she said it. You just need to get your heart right. If you can get your heart right with God, you'll be all right. But if you don't, you're going to get in trouble. And God has a purpose for every life. You think God has a purpose for your life? You weren't born for nothing. God's got some reason for you to be here. You can help somebody else. Matter of fact, you ought to. I think there's a lot of people kind of wasting their lives. They're not doing much anything. Really, what is the purpose for living? Well, 1 Corinthians 10:31, everybody ought to know that verse. It says, whether therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. Are you trying to bring glory to God? And so then another place I wanted you to go with me is go to Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. We'll just read a few verses here and then I'm done. Ephesians chapter 6 verses 1 through 4. And I think a lot of the kids need to hear this, but they're not going to hear it over to school. They won't let them read these verses. Ephesians 6 verses 1 through 4. That's what we're going to look at. And it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord. This is right.
Amen.
Do parents have authority over the kids? You know, sometimes I think the government thinks they own your children. They don't own your children. God didn't give the government your children, He gave them to you. Now some parents aren't doing the job they ought to do. And it makes it maybe kind of hard sometimes to honor some parents. But a lot of mothers have sacrificed, and fathers too. My dad would go out and work. Now, he wasn't good at managing money, but my mom was. So between the two of them, they did pretty good. Verse 2, honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. Well, what's the promise? You want to live long? Verse 3, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. Live long and prosper. Of course, you know, some people think prosper and just have a lot of money. That's not the only. You know, if you can get along with people, that's prosperity.
Amen.
You ever have any trouble getting along with people? I have. Sometimes when I was working at Coke, there were some people down. Yeah, you know what I would usually do? I didn't usually get in big fusses with them, but I'll tell you what I'd do. I prayed, Lord, I wish that guy'd get saved. Because if he'd get saved, then God could work on him. Now, I can't change him. I could try to show him how he ought to act by the way I live, but I can't change people. Can you save anybody? Can you really change people? But you can pray. And I guess if you prayed and the Lord heard your prayer, you'd be changing them in a sense. I remember a fella getting saved when we were in the store building over on Wayne Street. He's working at an O'Malley supermarket. That's where the Marsh was that they've shut down out here that's sitting empty back then. And he got saved in our church. He saw a film called The Burning Hell, and it showed what it'd be like if you died and went to hell. And he walked out of the church and walked about a half block up the street, him and his three friends. They were in their probably real late teens, early 20s. And they come back and said, our friend here wants to talk to you. So we went in and I took the Bible and opened it, and he prayed and asked the Lord to save him. Well, I was out at O'Malley's a short time after that, and he's out there working, and he comes walking up. He said, oh, this is the guy that saved me. I said, no. It's kind of embarrassing. I said, no, I can't save anybody. I told you how to get saved. Only God can save you. And only God can keep you saved too, by the way.
Amen.
But if you get saved, He'll keep you saved. There's promises in the Bible. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them. They follow me, and I give unto them eternal life. They shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand.
Amen.
I told a guy that didn't believe that. He thought he could lose his salvation. He said, but you can hop out. I said, well, are you a man?
Amen. That's good.
so they didn't quit talking about it.
Exactly.
Sometimes at work I'd be up on break, and I'd have my Bible and be reading it. And one guy belonged to the Worldwide Church of God, Herbert W. Armstrong, Garner Ted Armstrong stuff. And I'd show him verses. Then I'd tell him to him, I'd turn the Bible around and say, now read that.
Amen.
And he'd read it, and then he just wouldn't say anything. Because it's kind of hard to argue with the Bible.
That's right.
They can argue with me, but they can't hardly argue with God.
Amen.
And God says it, that kind of settles it, doesn't it? But anyway, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live a long life in the earth. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord.
Amen.
Those are good verses in the Bible. But it's not mom's job to do it all.
That's right.
Uh-huh. We've got to nurture them and admonish them. Sometimes you have to tell them, you've got to behave. Of course, the best thing to do is you behave in front of them.
Amen.
If you don't, I don't know if you ought to be telling them to behave.
That's right.
But none of us are perfect.
No.
Wasn't for Jesus, none of us would go to heaven. Let's all stand.